10:40 p.m. on April 5, 1945, Sergeant James Hartwell crouched behind sandbags on Okinawa's southern perimeter, peering into the darkness where Japanese infiltrators were expected to emerge. He was 24 years old. 7 nights into the Okinawa campaign, 0 Japanese detected after dark. 1st Battalion had lost 18 men to nighttime attacks in 4 days. The Japanese moved like phantoms through American lines. They carried grenades and bayonets. They knew exactly where to step, where to crawl, where to strike. American soldiers remained in their foxholes after sunset and fired at anything that moved. It rarely worked. The Japanese had trained for night combat since the 1930s. They had anticipated war with the Soviet Union and understood they would need every tactical advantage available. By the time they reached the Pacific Theater, Japanese infantry could maneuver in total darkness better than most American units could operate in daylight. Hartwell's battalion had tried everything: wires strung with tin cans, noise traps tied to barbed wire, listening posts positioned 100 yards forward. Still, Japanese infiltrators slipped past the sentries and appeared inside the defensive perimeter. Command posts, ammunition dumps, field hospitals, nothing was secure after dark. Between August 1942 and April 1945, American forces in the Pacific had learned to dread nightfall. At Guadalcanal, the Japanese had used darkness to counter superior American firepower. Small teams pushed deep into U.S. positions, cutting communication lines and spreading chaos. The psychological toll was severe. Men grew exhausted from constant fear. Unit cohesion frayed. Some soldiers fired at shadows, others froze and were killed. By Okinawa, the Americans had improved tactics, coordination, and artillery support, but they still could not see in the dark. The Japanese could not see either, but they did not need to. They had rehearsed night attacks so extensively that they could execute them almost blind. They knew exactly how many steps to take before throwing a grenade, exactly where American defensive positions would be based on daylight reconnaissance. Hartwell had heard rumors about a new weapon, something developed by the Army Corps of Engineers, something that allowed soldiers to see at night. The intelligence and reconnaissance platoon was supposed to receive them first. No one knew whether the rumors were true. On April 4, a supply sergeant delivered 3 wooden crates to battalion headquarters. Inside each crate was a modified M1 Carbine, but it looked nothing like a standard weapon. It had a large cylindrical scope mounted on top, a bulbous infrared emitter beneath the stock, a pistol grip with a trigger switch, and a thick power cable leading to a canvas backpack containing a lead-acid battery. The entire system weighed 28 pounds. Most soldiers who saw it laughed. It looked like something out of a Buck Rogers comic strip, a ray gun from the 25th century. The official designation was carbine, caliber .30 T3, with sniper scope M2. But everyone simply called it the ray gun. If you want to see how Hartwell's ray gun performed in combat, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Second World War. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Hartwell. 3 T3 carbines for a battalion of 800 men. Hartwell received one. Private Kenneth Mills received another. Corporal Raymond Foster received the third. They were given 15 minutes of instruction. Point the infrared emitter at the target. Flip the switch on the pistol grip. Look through the scope. Targets would appear in shades of green. 70 yards. Battery life, approximately 4 hours. 9:55 p.m. on April 5. Hartwell activated his infrared emitter for the first time. The scope revealed a green-tinted landscape stretching into the darkness. He could see terrain features, vegetation, and the edge of a destroyed building 70 yards away. He had never experienced anything like it, and he had no idea whether it would work when the Japanese arrived. The first Japanese infiltrator appeared in Hartwell's scope at 10:18 p.m., a green silhouette moving through brush 60 yards out. Then another, then 3 more. They advanced in a loose line toward the battalion perimeter. Hartwell could see their weapons, observe their movements, count them. He had spent 7 nights on Okinawa firing blindly at sounds. Now he could see the enemy as clearly as if someone had switched on stadium lights. The infrared emitter projected invisible light detectable only through his scope. The Japanese had no idea they were illuminated. Hartwell aimed at the lead infiltrator and squeezed the trigger. The carbine fired a single shot. The figure collapsed. The other infiltrators froze. They had no idea where the shot came from. There was no visible muzzle flash in the darkness. The T3 carbine did not yet have a flash suppressor. Engineers were still developing it. Through the green image in the scope, Hartwell could see confusion ripple across the Japanese faces. He fired again. Another figure dropped. The remaining infiltrators scattered. 2 ran left. 1 dove into a shell crater. Hartwell tracked the movement through his scope and fired 3 more rounds. 2 additional Japanese soldiers fell. The survivor in the crater remained motionless. Private Mills opened fire from a position 40 yards to Hartwell's left. His T3 carbine cracked twice. Then silence. Hartwell swept his sector through the scope. Nothing moved. He could see the bodies clearly. He could see the crater where the last infiltrator hid. He could see terrain features that would have been invisible without the infrared system. At 10:35 p.m., Corporal Foster reported 6 Japanese down in his sector. Mills reported 3. Hartwell had 5 confirmed kills. 14 enemy soldiers killed in 17 minutes. 0 American casualties. The battalion had never achieved anything close to that ratio in a night engagement. The T3 system had limitations. Rain degraded the infrared light. The battery drained quickly. The backpack was awkward and heavy. The entire setup made the operator a slow-moving target if the Japanese ever understood what was happening. None of that mattered. For the first time since Guadalcanal, American soldiers could see Japanese infiltrators before the infiltrators could strike. Word spread through the battalion by midnight. The ray guns worked. They truly worked. Companies that had lost men to night attacks every single night suddenly had a weapon that could stop infiltration cold. But there were only 3 T3 carbines for 800 men. Division headquarters had received roughly 150 T3 carbines for the entire Okinawa campaign. The Army had rushed them to the Pacific in late March and early April 1945. Production was limited. Inland Division of General Motors had manufactured 811 T3 carbines before contracts were cancelled. Winchester Repeating Arms produced 1,188 more. Fewer than 2,000 existed across the entire U.S. military. Most were issued to intelligence and reconnaissance units. Some were assigned to battalion perimeters where Japanese infiltration was most severe. The strategy was defensive. Place T3 operators in static positions covering the most likely infiltration routes. Let them observe. Let them wait. Let them kill anything that moved in the darkness. The Japanese on Okinawa had no idea what was happening. Their infiltrators were vanishing. Units that had successfully penetrated American lines for weeks were suddenly being cut down before reaching the perimeter. Some Japanese commanders believed the Americans had deployed a new type of illumination round. Others suspected traitors. None suspected infrared technology. On the night of April 6, Hartwell's position received orders to move 100 yards forward, closer to suspected Japanese staging areas. His battery was down to 2 hours of charge. Engineers had told him the lead-acid batteries would last about 4 hours under continuous use. He had been running the infrared emitter intermittently to conserve power, but he knew that somewhere in the darkness, more Japanese infiltrators were preparing to move, and this time they would be walking directly into his field of fire. The T3 carbine depended on technology that had not existed 5 years earlier. Engineers at the Bell and Howell Company in Chicago and the Cornell Dubilier Electric Corporation in New Jersey had developed the infrared scope under contracts from the Army Corps of Engineers. The system used an image converter tube that transformed invisible infrared light into a visible green image. A 6-volt battery powered a converter that stepped the voltage up to 4,250 volts. That voltage energized the image tube's internal components. The physics were complex, but the result was simple. Infrared light bounced off targets and entered the viewing scope. An electronic process converted that light into electrons. Those electrons struck a phosphorescent screen. The screen glowed green wherever electrons hit it. The soldiers saw a green image of everything the infrared emitter illuminated. Nobody had ever deployed anything like it in combat. The Germans had experimented with infrared sights on the Eastern Front. Their Zilgarat 1229 Vamper system weighed 33 pounds and saw limited use. The Japanese had no infrared capability at all. American scientists had developed the technology specifically to counter Japanese night infiltration tactics that had terrorized U.S. forces since Guadalcanal. By April 10, 1945, units across southern Okinawa were reporting dramatic results. Japanese infiltration attempts were failing. Small teams that had previously moved through American lines with near impunity were being destroyed before they reached their targets. The T3 operators sat in concealed positions and watched Japanese soldiers advance through what they thought was protective darkness. Hartwell killed 23 Japanese infiltrators in his first 5 nights with the T3 carbine. Mills killed 19. Foster killed 17 before a mortar fragment destroyed his infrared emitter on April 9. Replacement scopes were scarce. Foster went back to a standard M1 Carbine and could no longer operate at night. The pattern repeated across The island. Companies with T3 coverage stopped losing men to night attacks. Companies without T3 coverage continued suffering casualties. Division commanders began redistributing the limited number of scopes to the sectors where Japanese infiltration was most intense. Some battalions received 2 T3 carbines. Others received none. Intelligence officers started noticing something in captured Japanese documents, references to unexpected casualties during night operations, questions about American illumination methods, confusion about how infiltration teams were being detected. The Japanese command on Okinawa knew something had changed, but they could not determine what. American casualties from Japanese night infiltration dropped 60% in sectors where T3 carbines were deployed. That statistic came from division-level after-action reports compiled in late April. But the most significant number would not be calculated until after the first week of fighting. Intelligence analysts compared Japanese casualties from all causes against casualties specifically from small arms fire at night. Approximately 30% of all Japanese soldiers killed by rifle and carbine fire during the first 7 days of the Okinawa campaign died at the hands of soldiers using infrared scopes. 150 weapons, 30% of the enemy killed by small arms. The ratio was unprecedented in modern warfare. Hardwell did not know those statistics on April 10. He knew his battery was dying again, knew the canvas backpack straps were cutting into his shoulders, knew the infrared emitter was getting hot after extended use, knew that Japanese infiltrators kept coming every night despite the losses. At 11 p.m. on April 10, his scope showed movement 200 yards out, too far for effective engagement, but the figures were moving toward his position. He counted 8 Japanese soldiers. They were carrying satchel charges and grenades. They were headed straight for the ammunition dump 100 yards behind Hartwell's foxhole, and his battery had maybe 30 minutes of power remaining before the green image in his scope would fade to black. Hartwell watched the 8 Japanese soldiers advance through his scope. They moved in 2 columns of 4. Disciplined spacing, careful movement. These were not inexperienced infiltrators. They knew American defensive patterns, knew where listening posts would be positioned, knew that ammunition dumps were priority targets. At 180 yards, they stopped. The lead soldier raised his hand. The columns split. 4 moved left, 4 moved right. They were flanking, trying to approach the ammunition dump from 2 directions simultaneously. Standard Japanese infiltration doctrine. Hartwell's battery indicator showed red. Maybe 20 minutes remaining. He could not engage at 180 yard. The M1 Carbine's 30 caliber round was effective out to 300 yards in daylight, but the infrared system's practical limit was 70 yard. Beyond that, the image became too dim. The infrared emitter could not project enough light to clearly illuminate distant targets. He waited. The Japanese advanced slowly, 160 by 140. They were taking their time, checking their route, avoiding noise. At 120 yards, they stopped again. Hartwell could see them studying the terrain ahead, looking for the best approach to the ammunition dump. Private Mills was positioned 60 yards to Hartwell's right. His field of fire covered the eastern approach. Hartwell covered the western approach. Between them, they had overlapping sectors that created a kill zone, approximately 150 yards wide. But Mills's battery had died at 10:30 p.m. He was operating on a replacement battery that division had delivered 2 hours earlier. Those replacement batteries were salvaged from damaged T3 systems. Nobody knew how much charge they held. At 100 yards, the Japanese resumed movement. Hartwell activated his infrared emitter. The green image brightened. He could see individual soldiers clearly now. Could see their equipment. Could see the satchel charges they carried. Those charges contained enough explosive to detonate the entire ammunition dump if they reached it. 90 yards, 80 yards. The Japanese on the left flank moved into Mills's sector. The 4 on the right moved into Hartwell's sector. This was the moment. If both operators opened fire simultaneously, they could catch all 8 infiltrators in the open. If one operator's battery failed, 4 Japanese soldiers would reach the ammunition dump. Hartwell aimed at the lead infiltrator in his sector. 75 yards. Perfect range. He fired. The soldier dropped. He shifted to the second target. And fired again. Another soldier fell, the remaining 2 Japanese in his sector scattered. One dove behind a destroyed cart. One sprinted toward a shell crater. Mills opened fire. 2 shots. 3, 4. Hartwell heard the distinct crack of the M1 Carbine. Then silence. Mills's battery had failed or his infrared emitter had malfunctioned. The 2 Japanese soldiers in Mills's sector were still moving. Hartwell swung his scope left. He could see one infiltrator running toward the ammunition dump. 60 yards. 50. The man was fast. Hartwell led the target and fired. Missed. Fired again. The soldier stumbled but kept running. Hartwell fired a third time. The soldier went down. The last infiltrator had gone to ground somewhere in Mills's sector. Hartwell scanned through his scope but could not locate him. The infrared emitter's range was limited. The soldier was either beyond 70 yards or hidden behind cover that blocked the infrared light. At 11:23 p.m., Hartwell's battery indicator went black. The green image in his scope faded. He was staring into complete darkness again. Somewhere out there, at least 2 Japanese soldiers were still alive. One was hiding in Mills's sector. One was hiding behind the destroyed cart. In Hartwell's sector, both were carrying satchel charges. Both were within 100 yards of the ammunition dump, and Hartwell's infrared scope was dead. Hartwell dropped the T3 carbine and grabbed his standard M1. No infrared scope, no green image, just iron sights and darkness. He fired 3 rounds toward the destroyed cart where one Japanese soldier was hiding. Heard nothing. The ammunition dump behind him held enough shells and charges to supply 2 companies for a week. If the Japanese detonated it, the explosion would kill everyone within 200 yards. Mills fired twice from his position. His T3 battery was dead, but he still had his backup M1 carbine. Both soldiers were shooting blind now. Standard night defensive fire. Spray the sector and hope something hits. The method that had failed for 3 years in the Pacific. 2-star shells burst overhead at 11:26 p.m. Artillery illumination. Someone at battalion headquarters had seen the muzzle flashes and ordered fire support. The battlefield lit up in harsh white light. Hartwell saw the Japanese soldier behind the destroyed cart 40 yards away, raising a satchel charge. Hartwell fired 4 rapid shots. The soldier collapsed. The star shells drifted down on parachutes. Their light revealed the second infiltrator sprinting toward the ammunition dump. Mills fired. Missed. The Japanese soldier was 30 yards from the dump when a machine gunner from 3rd Platoon opened fire. The infiltrator went down. The satchel charge rolled from his hands but did not detonate. By 11:30 p.m., the sector was quiet. 8 Japanese soldiers dead, 0 American casualties, the ammunition dump intact. But the engagement had required star shells, machine gun support, and 2 soldiers firing blind after their T3 batteries failed. Without the infrared scopes, the Japanese would have reached the dump. Engineers delivered fresh batteries to Hartwell's position at 0200 on April 11. The batteries came from a supply depot that had received them 3 days earlier. Each battery weighed 11 pounds. Each provided approximately 4 hours of operation. Division had 200 spare batteries for 150 T3 carbines across the entire Okinawa front. The math was simple. Not enough batteries, not enough scopes, not enough anything. But the T3 system was producing results that no other weapon could match. By mid-April, Japanese infiltration casualties had dropped to levels not seen since the Americans landed on Okinawa. Intelligence reports from captured documents showed Japanese confusion about American night fighting capabilities. Some Japanese units reported that Americans had developed new illumination techniques. Others reported invisible sentries who could detect movement in complete darkness. The Japanese never determined what was actually happening. Their intelligence services had no information about Infrared technology. Their night vision research was years behind American development. They continued sending infiltrators against American positions because night attacks were fundamental to Japanese tactical doctrine, and those infiltrators continued dying. Between April 1st and April 30th, soldiers equipped with T3 carbines killed an estimated 1,200 Japanese soldiers during night engagements. That number came from unit after-action reports compiled by division intelligence officers. It represented kills that could be definitively attributed to infrared-equipped weapons based on time of engagement, sector coverage, and visual confirmation after sunrise. The actual number was probably higher. Some T3 kills were recorded as standard rifle kills because operators did not report their infrared equipment usage. Some Japanese soldiers were wounded by T3 fire and died later from those wounds. Some were killed by follow-up fire from other weapons after T3 operators detected and illuminated targets. Hartwell operated his T3 carbine for 23 consecutive nights on Okinawa. He killed 41 confirmed Japanese infiltrators, lost 3 batteries to water damage during heavy rain, replaced his infrared emitter once after the mounting bracket cracked, watched Mills take a grenade fragment to the shoulder on April 19 and get evacuated, watched new operators receive T3 carbines with 15 minutes of training and go straight into night defensive positions. On May 3, 1945, Division pulled Hartwell's battalion off the line for rest. His T3 carbine went to a replacement operator in 2nd Battalion. The war would continue for another 3 months. The infrared scopes would continue killing Japanese soldiers every single night, and Hartwell would spend the rest of his life trying to explain to people what it felt like to see in the dark when everyone else was blind. The T3 carbine program began in September 1943. That month, representatives from the Army Chief of Staff, Ordnance Corps, and Engineer Board met to coordinate infrared device development. The Army Jungle Warfare Committee had submitted an urgent request. They needed equipment to counter Japanese night infiltration. American forces in the Pacific were losing men every night to an enemy they could not see. The problem was clear. Japanese infantry had been training for night combat since the 1930s. They could navigate darkness. They could maintain unit cohesion without visual contact. They could execute complex attacks using sound and rehearsed movement patterns. American soldiers had no equivalent training, no equivalent doctrine, no equivalent capability. Standard American night defensive tactics involved staying in foxholes and shooting at anything that moved. Artillery fired illumination rounds that revealed Japanese positions, but also silhouetted American defenders. Searchlights mounted on ships provided some coverage near beaches, but were useless inland. Radar could detect aircraft, but not individual soldiers. The technology gap was killing Americans every single night. Engineers had been researching infrared systems since the early 1940s. The National Defense Research Committee had coordinated work between multiple contractors. RCA Laboratories in New Jersey developed the image converter tube. Other companies worked on infrared emitters, power supplies, and optical systems. By late 1943, the components existed. They needed a weapons platform. The M1 Garand rifle was too heavy. Adding a scope, emitter, and battery pack would make it unusable. The M1903 Springfield had the same problem. Submachine guns lacked the range and accuracy needed for night engagement. The M1 Carbine emerged as the best option. It was light, semi-automatic, accurate enough out to 200 yards, and it fired a .30 caliber round that could kill at the ranges where infrared systems would be effective. The Ordnance Department had already been testing a telescopic-sighted carbine variant designated M1E7. That program started in June 1943 to evaluate the carbine as a lightweight sniper rifle. Results were disappointing for daylight sniping, but the M1E7's integral scope mount design was perfect for mounting infrared equipment. Inland Division of General Motors received the
contract to develop the infrared-equipped carbine. They modified the M1E7 receiver to accept the mounting hardware for the infrared scope. They redesigned the stock to accommodate the infrared emitter underneath the barrel. They added a pistol grip with a switch to control the infrared light. The resulting weapon was designated T3. Testing began at Aberdeen Proving Ground in early 1944. Engineers evaluated different battery configurations, different emitter designs, different scope mounting systems. The goal was 70 yards of effective range. Anything less would be tactically useless. Japanese infiltrators typically moved within 50 to 100 yards of American positions before launching attacks. The entire program was classified secret. The War Department did not want information about infrared capabilities reaching Japanese intelligence. Production facilities received security restrictions. Personnel underwent background checks. Even the factories manufacturing components did not know the complete system design. Bell and Howell built scopes. Cornell Dubliner built power supplies. Inland built carbines. Final assembly happened at secure locations. Limited procurement authorization came through on February 17, 1944. Inland received a contract for 1,700 T3 carbines. Winchester received contracts for 5,160 more. Production began immediately, but manufacturing was slow. The image converter tubes required precision assembly. The infrared emitters needed careful calibration. The power systems demanded quality control that delayed output. By December 1944, fewer than 500 complete T3 systems existed. The invasion of Okinawa was scheduled for April 1, 1945. Division commanders wanted the infrared scopes deployed as quickly as possible. The question was whether enough systems would reach the Pacific before the invasion and whether soldiers with 15 minutes of training could effectively operate technology that had taken 2 years to develop. The T3 carbine's effectiveness dropped dramatically in rain. Water on the infrared emitter lens scattered the light beam. Water in the air absorbed infrared radiation before it could reach targets. Heavy rain reduced effective range from 70 yards to 30 yards or less. Fog had the same effect. Mist, even high humidity degraded performance. Okinawa's weather in April and May 1945 was unpredictable. Days of clear skies, followed by sudden rainstorms, dense fog rolling in from the ocean. Conditions that turned the T3 system from a decisive advantage to a barely functional piece of equipment. Operators learn to cover their infrared emitters with improvised shields, learn to wipe lenses constantly, learn to accept that some nights the technology simply would not work. Maintenance was another problem. The image converter tubes were fragile. A hard impact could crack internal components. The infrared emitters used sealed beam lamps similar to automobile headlights. Those lamps burned out after extended use. Replacement parts were scarce. Some T3 operators went days without functional equipment while waiting for replacement tubes or lamps to arrive from supply depots. The Japanese never developed effective countermeasures. Their intelligence services captured several damaged T3 systems during the Okinawa campaign. Technical analysis revealed the infrared principle, but Japanese industry lacked the capability to produce equivalent equipment. Their electronics manufacturing was focused on radar and radio systems. Image converter tube technology was beyond their industrial capacity. In 1945, some Japanese units tried tactical adaptations. They increased the spacing between infiltrators. They used more indirect approach routes. They launched attacks during heavy rain when they suspected American night vision equipment would be degraded. None of these adaptations significantly reduced their casualties. The T3 operators simply adjusted their tactics and continued killing infiltrators. Production of the T3 carbine ended in August 1945. Japan announced surrender on August 15. The Ordnance Technical Committee canceled all weapons contracts on September 3. Inland had manufactured 811 T3 carbines total. Winchester had manufactured 118. Combined production was 1,919 carbines, far short of the original contracts for thousands more. Most T3 carbines were destroyed after the war. The Army classified the entire infrared program as confidential. The technology
was too valuable to allow into civilian hands or foreign intelligence services.
Units turned in their T3 carbines for demilitarization.
Receivers were cut,
Scopes were destroyed,
batteries were disposed of.
only a few dozen T3 carbines survived as museum pieces or escaped demilitarization through bureaucratic errors. But the technology did not die. Engineers took lessons from the T3 program and applied them to new systems.
The M3 Carbine appeared in 1950 with an improved infrared scope that had
longer range and better reliability. That system saw extensive use during the Korean War. Later developments led to
the Starlight scope used in Vietnam.
Modern night vision systems trace their lineage directly back to the T3 carbine. Deployed on Okinawa in April 1945,
the statistical impact remained
undeniable.
150 T3 carbines had accounted for 30% of Japanese casualties from small arms fire
during the first week of fighting on Okinawa.
Those 150 weapons, operated by soldiers with minimal training, had killed more enemy troops in 7 days than entire battalions typically achieved in weeks of conventional night defensive operations.
The Japanese never understood what eliminated their infiltrators. American after-action reports from Okinawa were classified for decades.
Japanese historians researching the campaign found references to unexpected losses during night operations but no explanation for the sudden improvement in American night fighting effectiveness.
Some Japanese veterans suspected new U.S. tactics. Others thought it was improved illumination.
None realized that American soldiers had been equipped with technology that would not become standard in military forces for another 30 years.
The T3 carbine had altered warfare in ways that would not be fully understood until infrared technology was declassified in the 1960s.
By then, the soldiers who had operated the ray guns on Okinawa were scattered across the United States, and most people who heard their stories did not believe them.
Sergeant James Hartwell returned to the United States in October 1945. He carried no T3 carbine with him.
The Army had confiscated all infrared equipment before units departed Okinawa. Soldiers signed documents acknowledging they had operated classified systems and received orders not to discuss the technology.
Most complied.
The infrared scope program remained secret for years.
Hartwell told his family he had served on Okinawa.
He told them he had seen combat. He did not tell them about the green images in his scope.
He did not tell them about watching Japanese infiltrators advance through darkness they thought was protective.
He did not tell them about the 41 men he had killed in 23 nights. The technology was classified. The kills were not something he wanted to discuss. Private Kenneth Mills recovered from his shoulder wound and returned to duty in June 1945. The war ended before he saw combat again. He never operated a T3 carbine after April 19.
He never saw another infrared scope.
He spent the rest of his life wondering whether the technology had been real or if combat stress had created false memories. He was not the only veteran who questioned whether the ray guns had actually existed. The soldiers who operated T3 carbines on Okinawa had participated in the first successful combat deployment of night vision technology. They had proven that infrared systems could provide decisive tactical advantages. They had killed over 1,000 Japanese soldiers during a month of operations. They had reduced American casualties from night infiltration by more than half in the sectors where they operated, and almost nobody outside military intelligence circles knew any of it had happened.
Declassification began in the early 1960s.
Military historians studying Pacific War battles discovered references to infrared equipment in unit records.
Veterans started sharing stories about the ray guns they had used on Okinawa. Technical specifications became accessible. Photographs of T3 carbines appeared in weapons reference books.
Gradually, the full story emerged. By that time, infrared technology had advanced far beyond the bulky systems used in World War II. Starlight scopes amplified ambient light rather than relying on infrared emitters.
Night vision goggles enabled hands-free operation. Thermal imaging could detect targets through foliage and fog. The T3 carbine was obsolete, yet it remained foundational, proof that night vision technology could transform combat. Modern soldiers carry night vision equipment as standard gear.
Every infantry squad has multiple soldiers equipped with systems capable of operating in total darkness.
Special operations forces use thermal imaging that renders darkness irrelevant.
Night fighting is no longer an advantage for one side, it is an expected capability. And none of it would have developed the same way without the 800 soldiers who operated T3 carbines on Okinawa in 1945. The Japanese soldiers who fell to infrared-equipped weapons never knew what struck them.
They followed their training. They employed tactics that had worked since Guadalcanal.
They moved through darkness that had always concealed them. And they died because American engineers had created technology that turned night into day, technology their commanders did not realize existed until it was too late.
If this story moved you as it moved us, do us a favor, hit that like button.
Every single like tells YouTube to share this story with more people.
Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.
We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every day, stories about soldiers and engineers who saved lives with infrared scopes and courage.
Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, or Australia?
Our community spans the globe. You're not just a viewer, you are part of keeping these memories alive.
Tell us your location.
Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Hartwell and the T3 operators do not fade into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.